Awesome. We're recording and welcoming everyone from around the world to our webinar. Thanks for joining us. We're going to give folks a few minutes of time here to get settled as they log on. Hello, everybody. Again, thanks for joining. We thankfully have people from all over the planet joining from around the world. So thank you for being here. If you don't mind, go into the chat and let us know that you're here and where you're visiting from, if you don't mind. Manchester, Rob. Hey, man, how you doing? Dan, thanks for being on. Dan McDonough. Awesome. Vincenzo, my friend. Good to see you, my friend. Fernando, great to see you. Bob, great to see you. Whoa, we got some. Herb Lipsman, man, we've got some rock stars here. Melissa, great to have you. Thanks for being here. Oh, wow. Wow, look at all these folks coming in. This is fantastic. San Francisco, Europe. Monica. Oh, Monica, thank you for being here. Great to have you here. Thank you for joining. We have South America, North America, Europe. It's the place to be. I hope so. It's great having anyone here. Thanks, Bob Esquire, to be here. What a great guy he is. We have got Risha, thanks for being here from Charlotte. Fantastic. Great to see everybody. I'm probably missing some folks, so my apologies if I'm not calling you out. So, Rob, we're going to give everybody another minute.
Yep.
Thanks, everyone, again. And please keep your questions for the end. We're going to do a Q&A, of course. And Monica, of course, with Athletica in Brazil. I love Monica. Monica, I was honored to be on the board with her at Ursa. Monica is fantastic. Thanks for being here. And Dan from Fitness Connect, great in Texas. Dan, you're a global powerhouse. So good to see everybody. Let's get started. Today, our agenda is going to, of course, introduce our guest, Rob. I'll tell you a little bit about him if you don't already know. And then we're going to talk a little bit about content in general today and the state of content, and a little bit about what's going to happen in the future from our view. We're not going to be overly futuristic. We're not going to get into as much of the gamification concepts. We're going to talk about some others that are pretty rudimental. And then we're going to have a little conversation with Rob, some of his observations, and then some Q&A with everyone here. So again, thanks for joining. Before we get into introducing Rob, I'd like to mention, and Rob, you're going to be at this event in Singapore next month, right?
Yeah. We're going to be there with some of our team. So great events. Singapore, obviously, beautiful place to be. So I want to say a lot of APAC people, but it's actually a pretty world event nowadays. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's going to be a great event. I hear nothing but phenomenal things about it. And that area of the world has a lot going on, as you know, in the realm of development for our health and fitness. So for everyone that's going, have a good time. I can't wait to see all the posts. It'll be fantastic. And then, of course, I'm going to be in Vegas speaking at the Gold's Gym Franchise Association's Owners Conference. That'll be next month as well. So I look forward to seeing all my friends from the Gold's brand there in Vegas. It'll be nice and hot, but it's dry heat, Rob. It's dry heat.
That's good. That's good. Better than Singapore.
Exactly. It's definitely wet heat. So, Rob, I know you don't like talking about yourself, but I'm going to get a little introduction. Rob's been working in the fitness space for over 20 years. He's been involved in operations and sales and a bunch of different aspects of the industry with brands like HDD, Fitness First. And then in his more recent past, probably over the last decade, Rob's really focused on platforms, particularly Wexer, where he's the chief growth officer for Wexer and has been with Wexer for the last 6 years. And of course, was with Club Virtual before then. And I think Wexer acquired Club Virtual and you kind of went along with the package, right, Rob?
Yeah, they had to take me. And then it turned out well.
I did. It did turn out real well. So I'm very thankful to have you here, Rob, and get some of your perspective
Thanks, Bryan.
for the audience. We're going to touch on some things that I hope people are going to find of great benefit. Some of this is going to be obvious, but as we'll point out, it's something that I think we need to really focus on, and we'll get into what that means. But let's talk about the state of kind of content today, Rob. When I said obvious, this is one of the things I'm talking about. 83% of people now in the US, they subscribe to some kind of video subscription, right?
Yeah, it's insane. It's obviously still growing. We knew COVID did a lot for that, but it's keep on growing. I'm obviously one of them. I think I got the whole package, Disney, HBO, everything. Watching Succession now, eagerly waiting every Monday for the new episode. But yeah, no, it keeps on growing, and obviously it's adjusting the whole linear television world out there. But yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, one thing to give perspective here is in the United States, more people have video subscriptions than put Christmas trees in their homes for Christmas or go to church, or I could go through the list of other things.
Yeah.
More people have video subscriptions than they do those things, just to give you a perspective of how ubiquitous subscription models for videos are today. And related to that is another kind of thinking that I've heard in the last year and change, which is somehow that COVID has kind of come to an end, that somehow the focus on content for fitness and wellness is now in decline, when the stats show quite the opposite, right, Rob?
Yeah, and to be fair, this was I'm from a business perspective happy to see this, obviously, but in all fairness, it did surprise me a little bit about how big this stat was. Luckily, we see a lot of people return back to gyms, which is obviously great, and they should definitely do that. But this consumption of content at home is great. And what surprised me actually even more is looking at some recent data from Statista, is that the revenue is up 24% since last year as well globally. It's 3.2 billion by now, which means it's, yes, there is a lot of free content out there, but revenue is going up rapidly as well. And even with operators, there's, I can't mention by name, but there are even operators out there that making 50 million in annual recurring revenue solely on their digital offering, which is obviously mind-blowing. So it's great that there is some out of the industry stats that show that this is growing. Obviously, if you work for a business like I do, that's very helpful. And I know you like these stats too, to prove what you've been talking about for maybe the last 20 years, Bryan.
What else is interesting about this that I think people need to keep in mind is we've seen the headlines on Peloton's business struggles. We've seen, some of the other platforms that used to have very high valuations have to readjust their valuations. Those matters are business model issues that have nothing to do with the broader matter of the fact that people are looking for convenience. Right. They're looking for access, right? And those business issues don't change this reality, which is a chart I've shared for a number of years, and which is Basic Fit's view, and a lot of other brands' upcoming view that if you're going to have a member customer as part of your brand, you need to have an ecosystem that serves them inside and outside the club for a lot of very real reasons, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. I always like these stats. As a Dutchie, we have to be a little proud of the orange and Basic Fit. Obviously, I saw Renee Moos on a podcast recently, being asked why such a small company has such big brands, and obviously Basic Fit is a big brand in the fitness industry too. And I think that's a great example, right? Arguably they're the best in the industry when it comes to omni-channel. They did a great job with their content GXR and invested a lot in studio and making that available. So yeah, they've done a real good job. Obviously we have RSG in Germany, but global that put the Cyberobics brand on the map. So that, yeah, great things are happening out there. So it's really good to see and be part of what is happening in their journey.
Yes, and as we've seen, we showed you some stats earlier to the audience. We're going to show you some even more interesting stats from some very current research. Some of you may have seen some of this research. This is the Deloitte content that was just released. I think their webinar was earlier today.
Yeah.
And you can get this content. We'll share that in a minute. But this research was just published. And it really goes into a lot of details about consumers. And as I mentioned, this was released earlier today. They did a webinar on it. You can get the full report through EuropeActive's website. You can look that up to get that information. But we're going to touch on some highlights. Rob, can you kind of talk about what the Deloitte research report was?
Yeah, so EuropeActive and Deloitte already do, and then be supported by some of the big operators in the European region to do this research. They kindly offer a lot of data to Deloitte to come up with the report. So it gives a lot of insight on the state of the industry in Europe, and the stats are really, really great. This is already the 10th year that they're doing this. And actually sitting in the webinar this afternoon, a lot of requests came from like, are you going to do this for North America? Is this going to happen for this country? And they're busy enough with this, but it gives a really good insight on the state of the industry. And this year especially, they did this survey in January 2023, so very recent, got over 11,000 or close to 11,000 participants, and some really, really interesting stats came from that. But what I really love about this, it's Deloitte, right? And we tap on the McKinsey research later as well. It's so great to see these companies step more and more into the fitness and health world and help us provide these very useful stats to build our strategies on.
Yes, and as to your point, I mean, this is a pretty significant survey. So by a very credible organization, and we're going to touch on a few stats here from that report. And there's a lot more to share, but we're going to touch on some basics. The good news, of course, the 11%, and then the digital 24% up. Can you kind of share your insights on these two important pieces of information?
Yeah, no, it's definitely good to see that practitioners are up. In the presentation, it showed that across Europe, memberships are up 12%. Obviously, 2022 wasn't a great year, but still good to see double-digit growth. And even though they tap on the tough times, and there are a lot of smaller operators that closed shop or even went bankrupt, still there's a very positive outlook for the fitness industry, which is obviously really, really good to hear for the European world. But what fitness means, that stands out for me. What fitness means is changing rapidly. So you see an increase of 24% in the at-home use. We can have a whole debate about what is being paid for that, and is that a real business model there? That's a different discussion, but it's a huge number, taking into consideration that the assumption was what we just talked about, is that content consumption might go down after COVID. And what was really interesting to see is and we haven't got this stat in, but when people got the report, they will see it. There's a diagram on solely in club, solely at home content consumption, and solely outdoor. And they overcross these paths, and you see almost every combination growing. So if we really want people to reach results, that will not happen if we focus solely on the four walls of the gym. Obviously, out there was there a longer time already, but consumption or content consumption at home or outside of the four walls of the gym is very, very needed to live up to the demand your members have.
Yes, exactly. Some other stats here, you know, are consumer sentiment, right?
Yeah.
With the 56%, tell us what your thoughts are on these two important stats.
Yeah, obviously these stats are really nice as well. We when this was presented when we were at EuropeActive the day before FIBO in April, we got questions if we actually paid for this. That is not the case. It's definitely trustworthy numbers, but what it clearly shows is that members require digital tools, and we're going to tap on that a little bit later. There are some mind-blowing stats out there of what a big gap there is in the industry. But one of the key takeaways from the research was that digital workout planning tools, for instance, is something that members just want. And you just have to walk into a gym and see how many people are on their phones. And not everybody is on Instagram or WhatsApp at the moment. They are actually using these tools. And it is mind-blowing for me. And I keep talking to the team to call our clients and prospects and everybody that we interact with, to call them out on it and have a respectful conversation. But there are still entrepreneurs telling us, like, I never had a member at front desk asking for digital content, or I never heard them ask for a workout planning tool. Or you get these comments where, of course, they don't ask it at the front desk. They just open their phone and they download an app that they want to use, and they're not using something from you. They go somewhere else. Right. And I think that's the big issue at the moment going on there. Is just, if you don't look, it's not there. But then the world is going by pretty quickly.
It is, and you see this. So the Deloitte information is very extremely relevant. And then you look at, like, even McKinsey, who updated their wellness report in the fall of 2022, and they did a survey in the US for last year, and you see similar things. The first thing that's interesting, as you mentioned before, is it's not just about fitness.
Yeah.
It's now this ecosystem with mindfulness, rest, nutrition, sleep, better health, right? Where consumers are starting, they think of fitness, but they think of their health overall and wellness, right, Rob?
Yeah, I think COVID probably helped with changing the perception of what fitness is, and it's more health now than it is fitness. And I think a great example there is mental health. For instance, it was a taboo for a lot of years for adults, but COVID, a lot of teenagers had to deal with that. And as soon as it started affecting our kids, all of a sudden we talk about it more often. So it's a bad thing, obviously, COVID happening to us, but I think there is some good outcomes there. And if you look at our mobile platform and what content is popular, sleep content that helps you sleep, or breathing content is enormously popular, not only with us, but you see it with apps like Calm, obviously, as well. And that is a big change. And I think that taps into how we need to think about our industry in general, right? It's like we want to be the experts on the fitness type of things, but fitness is not the right word anymore. There's so much more, and that's obviously the key to health insurance and to everything. And this report really helps changing perspective from within the industry, hopefully.
Yeah, and everyone knows if you're not sleeping well or eating right, your performance in fitness is not going to be good either.
There you go.
But like the Deloitte report, which focused on gym goers, 56% wanted to get digital content they weren't getting. In this is consumers overall showing this gap you mentioned before, where through this research as well, it shows that just in fitness alone, 32% didn't feel like they were getting the products or services they needed for their fitness, which is 1 in 3 consumers.
Yeah.
What is your thought on this?
Yeah, that's crazy, right? And it's very much in line with the EuropeActive survey. That's surprising, or not, maybe not surprising to see, but it's good to see. I used it a lot. We still in the industry a lot of times think that we know best, whereas we need to let data and our members, our guests, and maybe even better, people that are not working out in our gyms tell us what is missing. And I used the penetration rate, right? The US has with, I believe, 21% great penetration rate. Here in the Netherlands is, I believe, 17 or 18. A lot of European countries have high numbers. But if we consider that, right, even if it's 10 or 20%, there's still 80 to 90% of people that don't come into our gyms. And if you look at our health discussion just now and taking our industry seriously, like these stats needs to make us take action and actually reach that other 80, 90%. So if you look at from that perspective, there is so much more room for growth in our industry, which should make us all very enthusiastic, but we can't keep doing what we're doing. We have to adjust.
Yep, well, no, we do, but it's just, this is to your point, like this is an advertisement for there's opportunity, right? I mean,
yeah,
look at this. I mean, you say there are not enough products or services available, or there are some, but I wish there were more. A third of people in the United States say this. So
yeah.
that means their needs aren't getting met. So that's just nothing but opportunity, Rob.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's great for us. So the future is there, right? We just have to grab it.
Yeah, and we have to think, and for those of you that have followed me over time or been to some of my talks or other webinars or the podcast, you've heard me refer to this before. This has nothing to do with anything more than how do you meet the needs of your members and the consumer out there for your business. And it's strategy. It's basic strategy. And when we think about the future, Rob, I've shared this as kind of the pillars of strategy. Mindset, user experience, the new economics. You mentioned, there's a player out there generating tens of millions of dollars a year on a pure digital platform, and then your execution engines. How do you do this? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, it's you just have to do it, right? We just mentioned with some of the examples the big brands out there. But one of our clients, Active Nation, UK-based company, they have 8 sites. They were pretty quick to jump on the bandwagon and have a mobile or an at-home solution during COVID. But they kept moving forward, and they still have a very decent model. They're charging £3.99 in pounds, which is close to $5 a month. And they have a great offering, and what you see there is on the execution side, right? The user experience is good, can always be better. You need to keep working. It's never good when you start. Tech is never done. It's never finished, but it's just doing it and going out there and be ready to fail and to learn and to take action. So it's not only the big boys with big budgets that should tap into this, but it's for everyone, right? You have your brand should have such a power in your region, your local community, that you can utilize this and have great offering. I like the mindset sides of the diagram. It's a can-do mentality will bring you a long way, right?
Yes, it certainly will. And what's ironic is that the Fitness Industry Technology Council, we did a survey through hundreds of different operators, and you see this, and then you see these kind of things, which is that according to our survey, less than half of the operators in the US even offer an app right now, and the ones that are offering apps, a large percentage of those, they're not doing a very good job of it. Like it's kind of like an afterthought. And that's a challenge. I want to get your thought on that. And then also, you know, still about 6 in 10 say they offer some form of content, but when you look at that content, the way it's presented a lot of times isn't optimal. And this shows kind of we're behind the adoption curve in general. Would you say that's accurate, Rob?
Yeah, I think this is obvious, right? And talking about the gap, and 32% of consumers don't see their needs met. Like if you don't even have an app, in some cases it's very poorly done. But what is taking a one step higher and maybe taking it away even from content or what you do in the app? What baffles me is that people don't think what they can do with an app from a marketing perspective. So as soon as people download your app, you have almost unlimited access to them, to their information, and it's a different business. You need to hire people that understand that, or hire a company that has the expertise and to help you. But I think the Planet Fitness story is, or I call it the Planet Fitness story, is great because they obviously are a low-cost operator and they churn a lot of people and they have to sign up a ton of members every month. And then people wonder how they do it. But I looked at their stats, and they had in 2022, they had 18 million downloads, which was the biggest app in the health and fitness space, more downloads than anyone. And I believe they have that 4 years in a row now. So if 18 million people downloaded their app last year, can you imagine the power they have and do that 4 years in a row? The amount of people they have access to, and almost unlimited access, like that, it's insane. So that's the first thing that I completely don't understand as a fitness business in nowadays industry.
Yes, and you almost have to think like an e-commerce company. And you know, this is a great example of what you and I were talking about in preparation for this. For those of you that don't know what Basic Fit is, it's the largest operator of budgets, one of the largest in Europe. It's a public company. You can get their data, but this shows you their tiered pricing and shows you what you get at each of these tiers and how that involves omni-channel. Rob, can you kind of explain this model?
Yeah, and just briefly on the last slides, when it comes to exercise, and that's how Basic Fit started. It was an add-on in the app, so they created their own content, which was an add-on in the app. I think if you look at the app in general now, for a lot of gyms, when they do it, they see it as a utility. So you can upgrade and up and downgrade your membership, or you can book your live classes, that sort of stuff, which is helpful from an operational perspective. But it's not really an experience where you drive people to the app when they're not going to the gym. And that's the thing that we just talked about. Like, how can you get people to interact with your brands and at the same time, hopefully get fitter while they're not in your gym? Because that's the stickiness factor, right? We have such a high churn rate because people don't reach their goals. Because getting fit, whatever fit may be, is just freaking hard. I'm not sure if I can swear. Normally I swear a lot. And I think Basic Fit evolved great there, right? The numbers, the monthly amounts you see now, the 19.99 on the slide is a promotion. Normally the premium, the mid tier is 29.99. So you can't really call it a low cost operator because this is per 4 weeks. So it's 12. It's not 12 payments, but 13 payments a year. But what I really liked about, and you get with the middle tier, you get all the content they create, and it's in the app, you get the app. But they evolved to that all-in membership where you actually rent a bike. So you get a bike at home delivered, and you will have access to an additional, I think, 100-something cycling classes. So there is a ton of content in the app already with a premium membership. But with the all-in membership, you get a bike at home and a ton of content on that as well. So that stickiness factor that they're trying to create, that's awesome. And I heard Renee Moos talk about that as well. I think that's not really related to DIT, but maybe it is what they did is they made it very easy to join. right? Which is great, and technology can help you with that. In essence, they can run their gyms without staff. They don't do it, but in essence, they can. That's how they think about technology. But they also make it super easy to leave, because in the past they didn't, right? We know all know the stories about how gyms out there that make it really hard to leave, and you have to come to the desk and you have to put a signature on paper actually in the facility, that sort of stuff. They switch that around completely and make it super easy to leave, which make people come back easy as well. If that journey of joining and then leaving really works well for you and you help them with it, they're quick to come back as well. But yeah, from an omni-channel perspective, that it's not connected equipment because you use the app, but having a bike at home and Basic Fit helping you to get fit at home is obviously a genius move, and it's interesting to see how the industry will follow. And I think one thing, Bryan, a final thought on that from the EuropeActive report. They were talking about the constraints on budget. So obviously inflation is high, people spending a lot of money, and the EU report shows that people prioritize fitness over and above groceries. So with even price increases, so the feedback from the operators in Europe was that the ones that did price increases had that go down really easy, because people see the added value. So yeah, that's obviously a great thing and means that we're doing something good. If that perceived value is so high that people will actually pay for it. And this offering is, I think, a good example of that.
Yeah, no, it is. So well, the reason I like to show this for folks is obviously showing you that in the real world, there are people actually executing an omni-channel strategy and it works.
Yeah.
And when you are omni-channel, it enables you to do a lot of things that you couldn't do otherwise. So we see the gap in the market, which is this gap where customers aren't having their needs met. They are, a large percentage of users and non-users aren't feeling their needs are met. You can see in the other research that a large percentage, over 56% of people in Europe alone, aren't getting content that they're looking for from their gym. So they're not getting any omni-channel experience. So that means opportunity, yet a lot of folks still are reluctant to pursue this for various reasons. And I'd like to hear your kind of comments and thoughts on that before we get into some Q&A. What are the takeaways from you, Rob, that people should keep in mind who are thinking about this?
Yeah, no, I like you mentioned that we're not making it too futuristic today. I love these debates and love to listen into it, but I look at often a little pragmatic, and I've got some colleagues that are great at the futuristic side of things as well. But what I would say is key takeaways are act. Like, don't keep brainstorming about what could. You just have to start, right? As we mentioned, tech is never done. It's never perfect. You just need to launch and then figure it out. So the good old plan, do, act, check business model really comes into place when it comes to this from my perspective. And with that, I would say choose the right partners. There are a lot of companies that are operating in this space, and there is not one company doing it all. It's not a one-stop shop. And if they say they do, they're lying. I'm 100% convinced of that. There is not one operator or one supplier that really has everything. So choose the right partners. Not everything on the start, but start somewhere. And I think that from a Wexer perspective is something that we did well from a strategy perspective is moving away from being a complete app agency and focusing on content consumption and the content distribution. That is what we're good at, and that's what we're focusing on. And that's the last thing, right? Don't be led by only one supplier or only one source of truth. We've seen in this slide deck and what we talked about today that the research and evidence exists. Deloitte and McKinsey And actually, we had a meeting with McKinsey earlier this week, and they mentioned they have globally over 250 associates only working on health and fitness. And they're proactively engaging with companies like us to ask us, like, what are the stats that you think the industry needs, and how can we help the industry to grow and to better understand? And they have the manpower for it. Like 250 associates alone on working on health and fitness is mind-boggling. So those will be my thoughts on this.
Yeah, good thoughts. So why don't we get into some Q&A here? We'd love to have your questions, any thoughts you'd like to discuss. I'll stop sharing this. My friends that are on the line, we'd love you to share your questions and views. Rob, in the interim, I know that there are a lot of clubs that you all support a great deal. Oh, here's a good question from Victor, but I'll get to you in a second, Victor. What are some, what are a couple of the chains that you all have helped a lot in this navigation who've really been great at adoption? I think RSG is one of them, right? Their brands. Who are some others?
Yeah, Evolution Wellness in Asia. They've done some great things, and we've been able to help them. And what the great thing about that is that on the back you'll get a lot of stats and research back. So I would definitely recommend everybody to go to the website, go to the blogs. There's some interesting stuff on what is popular content amongst our clients. Some others are Good Life and some of the brands that are there that we're working with. But yeah, like I mentioned, Active Nation in the UK as well. It's not only the big box operators. That there is something to do for small and big here.
Yeah. So here's some first, before I get to your question, Dan McDonough says, hey, I think sometimes we have to serve our members with services and products they didn't even know they needed. They don't know until they know. Very true, Dan.
I see the faster horse comment. That's definitely true when it comes to this, right?
Yeah. Victor asks, where's the first step? What's the first step to starting this journey in your view?
There's a lot of different ways to approach this, right? But where we have a lot of debate with our clients is, what is the reason you're doing it? So obviously the market is demanding you to do it, but how does this fit in your business model? So are you doing this because you want to monetize it? That's a completely different approach than if you would say, hey, no, we're taking these costs and we're doing this because this needs to be a retention tool, because the market is demanding it and we want to retain our members and pay for it this way. So there are so many different approaches, and I think that needs a clear answer, because if you choose the wrong one or you're not right on that, and we have that after a year or after 2 years, you have the conversation, hey, this was a retention tool, but then after 2 years you have the conversation, we don't earn any money on this. No, but it's a retention. Like, so what's your strategy? What's the reason why you want to go down this route?
Yeah, it's about strategy. Emma, great to see you here. Thanks for your comments as well. She agreed with Dan, the faster horse story. Yeah, that's exactly true. So we have Richard Playfair. What content creation struggles do you think gyms struggle with during the pandemic, and what has changed since?
Yeah. During the pandemic, obviously it was the wild, wild west, right? We've seen it all. The people at home in front of the TV having the cat run through the to the shot, and it didn't really matter, right? Everybody jumped on creating content, and it is easier to do. But what has changed definitely since is quality. So where during COVID, quality was not the most important thing, quality of content is getting more and more important. So I would definitely say that. And creating content, therefore, it's not easy, right? It's a lot of work, and getting one round of content created is nice, but the refresh rate of content is really important as well, right? So if we compare in club with at home, it's completely different. So keep constantly creating content is an issue. So what we can help with is look at your company and what content is being consumed the most, and then make sure that you start developing that content first. So you don't have to have the full library, right? So do what is being used most.
Yeah, very good feedback. Some comments here. The quality and scalability of the process, Karen, is addressing that point that you just addressed. Dan brings up, yeah, consumers are becoming more sophisticated, more discerning. I think there's true. And Garrett, thanks for being here, Garrett Marshall. Great information. He refers to the McKinsey report. How would you think about the role of content across peripheral categories? That's a good question. Like nutrition, sleep, mental health, etc. What do you think about content in those dynamics?
Oh, yeah. We see a lot of demand for that. We're so from a Wexer perspective, we're trying to expand the library into those sectors, but I think it comes back to the slide we showed, right? Fitness is not the fitness that it was. Barbell class, get a kettlebell, do some cycling. Cycling is super important, but we see it move to sleep and mental health. But nutrition is obviously a huge pillar there. So that content is growing, and it's growing rapidly. But in all fairness, if you look at an operator, that is slightly harder to shoot. Whereas normally, as a bigger operator, you have a couple of rock stars where you can do a barbell class, or you can do a cycling class. But nutrition is slightly more difficult to start with. But there is some great content out there.
Yeah, there is. And I think you're going to continue to see those things evolve and develop in the way of content. Jonathan Tustain, to everyone, we have seen the success of apps like Sweatcoin and rewards with companies like Endurance Zone. How important do you feel reward metrics and wearables are considering content? What are your thoughts on that, Rob?
It shows that it works, right? I always use my own Apple Watch, and I don't wear it now because sometimes I'll get a little fed up with it as well. But it does help, right? I've seen myself in front of the telly, sitting on the couch, thinking, I need a couple of more steps, and then get in front of the telly because you want to make sure that you finish all your rings. So I definitely see it work. And this again comes with choosing your partners, right? If you have a digital solution and you think you need to add something like that, there are some great companies, some have mentioned, there are others out there that can help you integrate that rewards system if you don't want to create it all of your own.
Yeah, but I think that dynamic is a real one. It's mainstream now, and I think it's only going to continue. Yeah. We have a question in the queue. Are you finding gaps in certain demographics in terms of being tech savvy? If we appify the at-home or gym experience, are we missing some? I saw a great initiative in London where they were delivering low-tech iPads to oldies at home with one button to push. Yeah. So what do you think about that and the gap around demographic segments?
Yeah, that takes it broad, right? So we work a lot with operators, being B to B to C, right? So help gyms, help operators to think, how can they reach their demographic? If that's their demographic, like it shows, right? It's a great idea. If as soon as you have a platform, as soon as you have content, it makes it a whole lot easier to tap into those niches. And if you think that niche work, by all means, create the content or source the content, and we can help with that if they want, and add this to your strategy and plan, do, act, check, and adjust, right?
Yep. Emma asks, and that's right. Emma asks, listening to the EuropeActive report this morning, while we don't have exactly the same optics on the US, what key differences would you expect here versus Europe? Emma, I don't think there's much of a gap, frankly. What do you think, Rob?
Now you know the US market much better than I do, but I would say there is no difference too. We've seen some of the stat looking at the McKinsey, the gap slide that we had in EuropeActive. It was near to the exact same stat on that particular part. So I don't see any reasons why it would be different. Why consumers in North America would be different than Europe.
No, they're not going to be much, in my opinion. I think you're going to see some variations based on penetration, depending on the different nations. So as Rob mentioned before, obviously, as you know, Emma, there are lower penetration rates in certain aspects of Europe. And then accordingly, there are different penetrations and then different competitors in that market. So choice may not be as broad in certain markets as it is in others. We also know that urban versus non-urban, you get different levels of density and different lifestyles that lead to more consumption in various ways. So, but I think on the whole, I don't anticipate there being huge variations either. Richard Playfair, what's the best evidence that supports the idea that virtual workouts consumed at home converts clicks to bricks and mortar members? So as far as real evidence goes, I think I would direct you to the Basic Fit public filings. I don't think they get into that detail, but if you knew a little bit more about their business or like Cyberobics and RSG, what are your thoughts on that, Rob, as far as converting apps to in gym?
Good question. I think the Planet Fitness example is a nice one, right? It's a matter of what you do with it, right? As soon as you have access and you build a proper strategy and you have a proper call to action, it will work, right? It worked for e-commerce. It works with flyers. I believe there are still operators that do flyers, right? So why wouldn't it work with a digital solution?
Yeah. Richard, all you have to do is look at retail, in Europe or the United States. Look at who the major retailers were. I just purchased a pair of shoes I've been looking for. I Googled that. I ended up getting on the Neiman Marcus site, got their app, and I would never have gone to Neiman Marcus because it's not one in my marketplace. But the propensity of me to go into that store now is heightened a great deal because I did a transaction and bought shoes from them. So at least they're top of mind. And, there's some channel for me to get to them as from an experience perspective and as a customer. And as Rob pointed out, now they're the benefactor of the fact that I've got the app and I purchased product from them. I would have never had an interaction with them otherwise, because unless I was physically in a city where they were, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to. So I think a lot of other industries have proven the point that app to in-store is absolutely a real world experience. Come on, Bryan, you've just bought a complete new wardrobe, right? Exactly, Rob. Bob Asquari, thank you for being here, Bob. As long as the consumers recognize our brand value, I'll take that consumer's fees both inside and outside of the four walls. That's a very important point, Bob, regarding overall experience and brand value. This is really about that, with technology just being a channel of distributing that experience, right, Rob?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think we mentioned that briefly. I think a lot of operators underestimate the brands that they have. You don't have to be the next Peloton, right? In your local community, you're a strong brand. So think about how technology can help you bring more people in touch with that brand, and ideally have them getting to move, right? Because in essence, that's what we all want to do. We want to get people moving and help them get fitter and healthier.
Yep. And Bogdan, our friend, hey Bogdan, thanks for being here. Good to see you. Can you please share some thoughts about the digital channels and content formats that the customers prefer? Well, Rob, we talked about cycling being big. Yeah. We talked about the growth of mental health and sleep. What are some other thoughts you have?
Yeah, nutrition has been mentioned as very popular. Short workouts, doing it from top of head, I believe it's close to 80% of our content being consumed is 20 minutes or shorter. So that is something that's really important. So yeah, no, there are a lot of blogs on that on our website as well, if they're interested in that.
Yes. And then a final question. Again, thanks everybody for being here and your great questions and interactions. I so much appreciate it. I know Rob does too. Let's go to this final one. In comparison to previous years, is there a noticeable surge in the adoption and popularity of gamification within fitness content, or is there a decline? I don't know about that offhand. I think, what are your thoughts, Rob?
No, I don't know that offhand too. So looking at gym operators, gamification obviously is a big thing, but it's also a difficult thing, right? So looking at what has been accomplished so far, just getting started and get some content out there would be a huge step forward. Gamification is definitely something that needs to happen. But yeah, it will be hard for a lot of operators to start there. I do think it's getting more and more important, especially the community factor of gamification will be big.
Yes, it will be. And those are arenas and platforms with gaming and other
Correct.
kind of channels that will continue to evolve. Well, Rob, thank you so very much. I really appreciate your being a part of this to help our listeners kind of navigate this opportunity. And it's been great knowing you over the years, and that you carved out some time to share your views, given your long experience in this space, is very appreciated by everyone.
Thank you, Bryan. It's an honor. Happy to do it. Thank you all for joining in, and happy to speak to whoever. Please reach out on LinkedIn. My email is there if you want to chat. Reach out, and happy to carve out some time.
Well, great. And for everyone, connect with Rob in Singapore. If you're in Vegas in June at the Golds event, please let me know. And if I can do anything to be of help, Bryan K. O'Rourke at Gmail, or you can find me on LinkedIn like Rob mentioned, and we're here to be of help. And thank you again for attending. Thanks again, Rob.
Bye, guys. Thanks, Bryan.